And that is where Zach Lowe comes in. Zach, should the 76ers give the max to James Harden this offseason?
No, under no circumstances. If you're talking the 5-year fully guaranteed max, absolutely not. That went out the door a long time ago with his latest elimination game blunder. That's gone. Shorter term deal, please.
Okay, and let's see if he accepts that. Now, should the Pelicans give the rookie max extension to Zion Williamson?
Absolutely. Despite the injuries, you have to do it. He's that talented. I suspect they'll build in some injury-related protections or games played protections, just as the Sixers did with Joel Embiid before. But yeah, if you're the New Orleans Pelicans, small market, you bring back Zion, no doubt.
Okay, now here's the big one. Should the Nets give a max deal to Kyrie Irving?
Woo! Sounds easy to say no. Hard no. He doesn't deserve it. He hasn't earned it. He never plays. But you do risk some discomfort or alienation with KD. A DEFCON 1 scenario of a trade request from KD. I still, though, say no. Find a middle ground that makes sense for everybody, a shorter term deal.
Okay, no with caveats. And by the way, Kyrie put out this, not put out, but he's got a reported trade wish list, including both LA teams, the Lakers, the Clippers, as well as the crosstown Knicks, the Heat, the Mavericks, and mind-bogglingly also the 76ers. None of those teams have enough cap space to sign him without Brooklyn's help, and sources said some of them aren't interested in acquiring him. Okay, so Woj, you were leading the charge on this story, that list. As you look at that list, does this make any sense to you? How do you process this?
Well, listen, part of this is a negotiation. He has wanted that long-term max deal in Brooklyn. It is not available to him there. I think the one team with the most interest in Kyrie Irving are the Lakers. There's really not a sign-and-trade scenario with Brooklyn that makes sense. Of course, if the Lakers wanted to offer Anthony Davis in a sign-and-trade, of course the Nets would love that. But that's not going to happen. And so if you're Kyrie Irving, your way to get to the Lakers very likely would be to opt out of your contract next week and sign the $6 million exception that the Lakers would have available. Now, the difference between that and his opt-in with the Nets is over $30 million. They could clear cap space the next year. They would have Russell Westbrook potentially coming off their cap and sign you to a more lucrative long-term deal if things work out. But in most cases, you would say a player's not going to do that. He's not going to give up that much money. But Kyrie Irving did give up about $17 million last year in salary by not getting vaccinated. Perhaps really impacted the loss of a shoe deal with the fact that he's been so unavailable. So with him, I don't think you say that won't happen, that'll never happen. But I think that list in terms of teams like Dallas, Philadelphia, the Clippers, I don't think there's interest there. The Knicks, they have some priorities well ahead of Kyrie Irving. Jalen Brunson is with Dallas is who they are trying to clear cap space to sign in free agency, not Kyrie Irving right now.
Wow, but I can't see them turning down Kyrie if there's a possibility, because the Knicks seem to love that superstar talent. So, Zach, I look at this list, which just has me mind blown. Which team on that list, on that trade list, do you think is his best fit?
Well, let's be clear. Uncertainty is Kyrie Irving's leverage right now. Uncertainty about Durant and uncertainty about his option. The minute on paper he opts in for next year, if he does, he would seem to relinquish some control to the Nets, who could just keep him. But he may say, I'm only opting in on the condition that you have a prearranged trade to one of these other teams. As for fits, I agree with Woj. The Lakers would obviously love to have him. Is there a 3-team trade where Russ somehow goes back to Oklahoma City in a salary dump? That seems complicated. The Knicks are an obvious fit if they think the Brunson situation isn't going to work out. Dallas may just outbid them for Jalen Brunson. We'll see. On paper, not in real life, but on paper, I've always liked the Dallas fit for him as the sort of theoretical secondary ball handler, jump shooter around Luka. But I just feel like coming off a conference finals run, as Woj indicated, I feel like that kind of ship has sailed for the Mavericks. I don't see much there. And as for the other teams, They got a lot of other things to sort out. Obviously, there's huge questions about Kyrie Irving's reliability. That said, if he's healthy, the reason he was out last year was the vaccination mandate. That's gone. That's a non-issue. If he tells people, hey, look, I can get you 60, 65 games, that's possible. Who knows?
Wow. And the Sixers one has me mind-boggled just because wasn't the whole thing of James Harden leaving Brooklyn because of the Kyrie situation? And now Kyrie would be saying, hey, I want to go to Philly. I don't know. I can't even go there. But let me ask you, the other question here is KD, right? Yeah. What's the impact of all of this on KD?
Yeah, listen, they came to Brooklyn together. They both still want to play together. And the difference between Durant and Irving right now, of course, is that Durant has a long-term contract that he signed last year. He's got 4 years left. Now, if Kevin Durant says, I want out and I want to be traded, if it's because Kyrie Irving opts out and leaves or there's a sign and trade and he leaves, Brooklyn would potentially be able to put together a trade package and get back a haul that might be historic in nature. You've never seen a player of Kevin Durant's stature at the very top of his game, at the very top of the league, who's under contract long term, becoming available in the trade market. And so, remember, this isn't the transfer portal. You don't get to say where you want to go. Teams are going to line up and give maximum assets for Kevin Durant because they know he has to play for them. He can't leave in a year or two in free agency where you'd be left for nothing after you gassed all your best young players, all your draft picks. That does impact your ability to tell the Nets where you want to go play at 34 years old.
But is this more about Kyrie leaving, or is it more about KD wanting to be on a winning team? So, for example, if it doesn't work out there, is KD fine being on the Nets if they can bring in or at least have somebody who's comparable to Kyrie and give him a chance to win?
Well, I had been told in the last few days, Ryan, that scenario was exactly how Kevin Durant was looking at this. That if Kyrie left, well, the Nets would have to show them that we can reshape this roster and come back with a championship contender. I think that's an evolving thought process with Kevin Durant. I think that the Nets knew when they entered these conversations with Kyrie Irving about his future that there was great risk about what it meant for Kevin Durant moving forward if they weren't prepared to do a long-term deal, a long-term max deal with Kyrie Irving. Obviously, they've been willing to take that risk because Kyrie Irving has not heard from the Nets the idea about a long-term commitment. So all of it is very much up in the air, and I think there's going to have to be some dialogue here to see if there's a way they can move forward. But I think this is a very perilous time for the future of this Nets organization. And this great experiment with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, them coming together, trying to win a championship in Brooklyn, it's not going great, Ryan.
Yeah. Zach, what do you think about all this, especially the KD side?
I agree with Woj. I think it's perilous is exactly the right word. You are 1 or 2 steps away from the entire thing going up in smoke, from you having lost James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant in the span of like 6 months. And as far as reloading, if Kyrie leaves for nothing, if Kyrie does the nuclear option of opting out and signing wherever he wants to go for whatever is available to him, Durant is going to look around and say, okay, I've got Ben Simmons, who hasn't played for us yet, and we don't really know what he's going to look like on our team, and then a bunch of role players. And at that point, the Nets are short on time and short on assets to retool around those 2 guys. Other teams have been preparing for this offseason for months and months and months, lining up all their ducks in a row. The Nets are suddenly thrust into a situation where on the fly, with not a lot to work with, in that scenario that Kyrie leaves for nothing, they would have to rebuild their team around them. That seems like a tall order. I agree this is perilous. And like Woj says, the whole league opens up for Kevin Durant. Every team with interest will throw the whole kit and caboodle at the Nets, and maybe that's the route you have to go, but we'll see. There's still time for a resolution.
Right. What a difference a couple months make. Just a couple months ago, they had Kyrie and Harden.